And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud sponsor of GTR Africa 2025. Absa is a registered FSP. Your story matters. Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes. We're live tonight from the start of the Absa Cape Epic, and the view and the weather are outstanding. I'm quite glad I'm not cycling in this heat, though. Maybe a little bit cooler for the start on Sunday. But it is just an astonishing view, and you can just imagine the pictures that you're going to be seeing, I presume, on your television as you follow the live coverage of this, one of the great mountain bike races in the world. And, of course, something that is on many, many people's bucket list. I must tell you, and you'll hear a little bit more about this as we go through the show together, you and I do some cycling myself. Not this, okay? So don't even bother to phone in and ask. Just not this. Plenty to come today. We'll talk about gold in just a moment, breaking $3,000 an ounce for the first time. The question, of course, is how long does this go on for? We all know why. The short-term reason, 14% up just this year, all really because of Trump's tariffs. We'll get more into that in just a moment. We'll take your calls too, of course, on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702. Just a quick mention about OUTsurance there. 6 monthly earnings to the end of December out today. Astonishing the difference a lack of a storm makes and how that has really pushed their earnings up, particularly in Australia and South Africa. It does tell you, of course, how tightly geared insurance companies are. We've had big conversations on The Money Show about the future of insurance in an era of climate change. I say that amid a gorgeous, clear, blue sky, even just after 6 o'clock this evening.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes, live from Merendal Wine Estate.
Well, we start tonight, of course, with gold breaking $3,000 an ounce for the first time, hitting $3,004 an ounce earlier before slipping back. Peter Armitage is the CEO of Anchor Capital. Peter, good evening to you. Gold been on a rally, a strong rally for such a long time, up 14% this year alone. Presumably, this is about Trump, it's about tariffs, it's about uncertainty. Peter Armitage, not sure if you're with us. We're just trying to connect that line so that we are able to actually hear you and continue that conversation because, as you know, it is one of the big issues of the moment, just making sure that finding out why gold is doing so well. The other question, of course, is it really is a question about American politics, how long this is going to go on for and what it is that's going to actually end this kind of rally for gold. Some people have been talking about the start of a new normal. Maybe it's a normal that will last for just, say, 4 years or so for whatever reason. But, of course, very interesting to see how important this actually is and what it is that is going to drive the gold price going forward. And so let's see if we're able to continue with Peter Armitage, the CEO of Anchor Capital. Peter, good evening to you. And, of course, the big question tonight is just exactly what's driven gold up so strongly in the short term. And presumably the answer is about Trump.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. It's all about fear. I think lots of indexes and assets around the world have changed price this year because of changing expectations. People just don't know what to expect. So across their portfolio, they want to diversify, and gold is obviously seen as a very safe asset. You must remember you don't get a yield on gold, so you're only buying it because you think the price will go up because it's safe. And a big factor has been the weakening of the dollar. So a weaker dollar means that gold is cheaper for people outside in the rest of the world. And the dollar's weakened by a massive 5% this year, which in global currency terms is pretty massive. And then if people, the tariffs can have a massive impact on inflation. And if the purchasing power of money is decreasing, that makes gold more valuable. So it's fears of higher inflation, uncertainty, wanting to diversify, a weaker dollar. Central banks around the world have been buying more gold because they want more certainty in terms of what's in their reserves. So it's been a powerful cocktail of factors that have contributed to gold being up materially over the course of the year to date and through the course of the last 12 months.
The fascinating thing, of course, is that a lot of these factors are likely to be with us for quite some time. Let me say perhaps another 3.5 years.
Yeah, but you must remember the market obviously looks forward. If you look at the stock market, in 16 days, you've had a dip of about 10 or 11%, a bit of a recovery today. But, people look forward and they try and price in what's coming. So I think, gold's at a really sharp rise. In a diversified portfolio, it still makes sense to hold some. But once you've had a big rise in something, people are tempted and hooked into buying it because they've seen what it's done, because they've got some FOMO. The difficult thing is, what is a fair value for gold? It's really just history and the real purchasing power. If you put inflation in and see the effective price of gold, and the highest it's been on an inflation-adjusted basis, if you go back 20 years ago, it got to the equivalent of about $3,800 in today's money. So that's one of the parameters. It could certainly, there's an argument that it can go up another 10 or 15%, but that would make it very expensive in historic terms. In terms of what does 1 ounce of gold buy in terms of other assets around the world. So you've already seen a pretty steep rise, but gold is put in the insurance category. And if you think things can really go badly, the cost of insurance is never too high. So, it's kind of one of those 2 or 3 or 5% in your portfolio type assets. It's not like equities where you're deciding whether to have 50 or 60%. So, if it's 3% or 4% and people really want it, they're happy to push it up. It's not a massive asset by asset class compared to equities or bonds or the like. So it's kind of a fringe asset. Not everybody has it. And that's why you can see some quite big moves, is lots of people start thinking they should have some of it. So it's supply demand. As I said, it doesn't have a dividend, doesn't have a yield, but it's a safety and feel good asset.
Peter Armitage, really appreciate the time tonight. Thank you. CEO of Anchor Capital on The Money Show.
7:02.
Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, live tonight, of course, from the start of the Absa Cape Epic in the Western Cape. You'll hear more about the race itself in a moment. First, I'm sure you've seen how the business around big cycling events has really started to boom over the last few years. Jonathan Meintjes is the global head of mountain biking at Ironman, one of the big people involved in all of this. Jonathan, good evening. I mean, you can really see this boom. How has the sort of business around mountain biking changed over the last 10 years? As an outsider, it looks like it's been dramatic.
Good evening, Stephen. Yeah, thanks for having me on the call, on the show. Yeah, there's obviously been a big change in mountain biking over the last few years. There's been a big boom, and we would have seen 10 years ago, maybe even further back, where a lot of people handed in their golf set for a new mountain bike. And obviously the boom with mountain biking as well, I think, gives credit to the safety that you do have riding on trails on the mountains. But I think recently, more importantly, a big contributing factor to that is how well our local athletes are actually performing on the world stage. I mean, last year was a remarkable year for Alan Hatherley and Candice Lill. And then you've got Matt Beers, who's obviously doing extremely well globally in the mountain biking, gravel, etc. scene. So cycling as a whole, I think, from a South African aspect, is on an up.
To create athletes like that, you need a whole ecosystem. In cricket terms, they talk about what school did you go to, the same for rugby. You need that for cycling too. You need an ecosystem. I'm looking at a glorious mountain from where I am now. You would think then South Africa's got a pretty good cycling ecosystem to produce people like that.
No, of course. I mean, we talk about, Cape Town from a tourist destination. It's got a bit of everything that you want. And I suppose that kind of relates to mountain biking in the sense that on our doorstep we've got these beautiful mountains with the beautiful farms that we've got. We've also got these incredible jeep tracks, and the climate, you've got a lot of internationals that actually come over and use Stellenbosch as a base for them to actually do training in like our peak times of summer throughout the year. And Stellenbosch, we consider that to kind of be the mecca of mountain biking in South Africa. So yes, when you talk about an ecosystem, I mean, we've one of the best places to come and actually have some fun and train.
I mean, the cycling that I do would be very, very amateur, Jonathan. I mean, to the amateur end of the amateur scale. And I noticed about 10 years ago that most of the people who did it tended to look like me. In the last couple of years, the events I've been to, it's much more diverse. There's been a real shift in who's cycling.
No, definitely, and I think you got to give credit when it's due. Our title partner, Absa, they're running a campaign now, the She Untamed. It's truly a remarkable campaign to obviously get more women involved in sports in general, but specifically, obviously, for our event in mountain biking. And then Exara has also been at the forefront of trying to include people from, say, disadvantaged backgrounds, get them more included into sport where, the opportunity to partake in these big mass events with multiple nationalities, it's truly life-changing. So, yes, there's been a big shift in diversity within mountain biking in the last few years, and you got to give credit when it's due. It's the partners that we have. So it's not only Absa Exara, it's also the charities we're involved with. And it's something we truly proud of. We have to promote the sport nationally within the country. And, that just think about that freedom that child gets that first time they are able to ride a bike. That freedom, we all experience it, and it's important that everybody has that opportunity. And very proud. Yesterday we handed out 50 avalanche bikes to Anna Foundation. It was kindly sponsored by the Ironman Foundation. So it's things like that where I think we have a responsibility to give back, but I think that is a good link into how diverse the sport has come over the last few years.
And Jonathan, one or two things about the behind the scenes of it. Arranging a running thing is one thing, right? People keep their own legs to themselves. Arranging something about mountain bikes, it's about you've got to make sure the trails are clean. You've got to make sure that they're tough, but not too tough, not madness. You've also got to be able to you've got to look after bikes. It must just be a monster to organize something on this scale.
Yeah, I think about when I first joined the business 14 years ago, and friends of mine said, really, do you just work on one event for the whole year, being the Absa Cape Epic, and it's a team of 30 of us? And I was like, yes. That's how tough it is. But yes, it's a mass operation, and it's there are so many stakeholders that are involved that allow us to put on this incredible event. And whether it's the crew members, the media, quite importantly, our landowners, because without the strong relationship we hold with our landowners, we wouldn't have a route. And we're also very privileged that the trails that we have in South Africa in general are manicured. So they are truly some of the best trails that you will get in the world. And then, as I said, the partners that we've had have really contributed to that as well. And then also you look at the international field that we get here, including the pros. They really are great ambassadors of the sport, and people love to follow it and love to actually know that they can, at the start line, see the best mountain bikers in the world take part in the event that they themselves are doing. So it's a big team effort. It's not just the 15 or 16 of us that are sitting here in the Cape Town office. It's stretched a lot further and wider than that.
Jonathan Meintjes, thanks for your time. I'm sure you have one or two other things to do this weekend. Global Head of Mountainbiking at Ironman. You with the Money Show, 22 minutes after 6. Well, look, as you know, the Absa Cape Epic, one of the premier mountain bike stage races in the world, a world-class event from Sunday until next Saturday. The total route, over 600 kilometers of racing, 16,000 meters of climbing. Put that into kilometers and just think that's up, by the way. Tina Venter is the Absa Group Executive for Marketing Operations. Tina, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's a huge event, a big event for Absa as well. Why is it so important to Absa?
So we've been a proud title sponsor since 2006. So this being the 21st edition, it just drives the narrative just in terms of our new brand positioning about your story matters. It's taking a human-centered approach in terms of our brand and looking at this and going, how do you elevate the communities you serve, the clients you serve, and the communities at larger scale in terms of this? So how do you use this as a platform to just deliver on that message that we drive about your story matters?
A big part of this, and Jonathan touched on it, has been bringing more women into cycling. And there's been a real shift in the sport over the last little while. How have you been able to do that? You've had to really deliberately drive it, I presume, in some ways.
As Jonathan mentioned, in 2019, we kickstarted this movement called She Untamed. And we really thought about this and go, how hard can this be? So we moved from 36 riders to 176 in 2024. This was a deliberate move on Absa's part to say, let's make this the cornerstone of driving transformation and diversity within the women field as well as the girls at school and beyond. So what we did was we enrolled a few teams, and this year we launched what we call the 12 for 21 class of 2025 for Absa, where we've got 12 teams that actually is going to take on this monster and deliver on it.
This 2025 race, I mean, do you make major changes year to year, or do you sort of follow the approach that you can't improve on perfection?
No, you can definitely improve on perfection. There's always something. You should never be so arrogant to think that this is the race that conquers all, whether you are on the bike or whether you are on the sidelines. So some of the improvements made is with our 3-year partnership extension with the Ironman group. This year also gives us access to the Global Mountainbiking series, which then opens doors for our She Untamed riders into the other series, the Epic Series races. So in so doing, we just keep on moving forward. We keep on building on nutrition, mental wellness. We bring in all those kind of luxuries like skills and stuff like that with professionals and coaches to just drive this narrative.
One of the collaborations, I mean, you picked some interesting choices. One is Force for Good. The other is, this is your title. This is the official title, I Love Boobies. I don't know if anyone thought about that title before they asked me to say it on the radio. Those are interesting choices.
It is actually proud partners to the Absa Cape Epic. So we partnered with I Love Boobies, and what we did was, because there's such a fundamental drive, where women, especially in the KwaZulu-Natal region, don't have access to screening. So we've screened 1,000 women to date, and we now got a footprint in partnership with I Love Boobies in the Western Cape and in the Gauteng. So we've now made a deliberate effort to say that wherever we go, we will be a force for good. And this year at the 2025 Absa Cape Epic, we have actually committed to I Love Boobies to say that we will screen all women crew on site, and test them.
A lot goes into this, right? I mean, there's a huge amount of money, time, energy, resources, the behind the scenes. I mean, just walking through the village, trudging by the end of it because it's so big. It really is, I'm not going to use the word epic, but it really is massive.
Yes, correct. So this is, as Jonathan pointed out, this is not something that you do from the side of your desk. This is commitment across a few months. Planning starts about 6 to 8 months in advance. You have to consider, as title sponsor, the access that you've got. How do you partner with your respective, whether it's coffee, whether it's alcohol, whether it's whatever. But at the same time, it's also about nutrition, putting the rider at your core, doing the setup, partnering with the likes of agency partners, which just carries you through. And you're only as strong as the partners that you surround yourself with. And you have to drive and sweat that asset.
Tina Venter, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Absa Group Executive for Marketing Operations here on The Money Show tonight, where we're live from the start of the Absa Cape Epic.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Grant Nader is the portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Grant, good evening. Obviously, we're going to have to start with gold tonight. Finally, past $3,000. We've been waiting for this for a little while.
Good evening, Stephen. It does seem to it almost felt inevitable, didn't it? People have been doubting it the entire way from when it broke through 2,000 to 2,500. At 2,800, I think it was just a question of time. And, I'm glad to see it. And it's happened in a manner that doesn't look hype-filled. It doesn't look like it's frothy and everyone wants to own gold. It's only now getting a real sense of attention. It's been a bit of a stealth success story, this one.
Outsurance, a strong earnings update from them, fewer storms in South Africa and Australia. All of that would help them, but still a strong update, although the market wasn't that impressed.
Yeah, I think the market's maybe being a little bit short-sighted here. Yes, it was actually a very good set of numbers, but what the market looks at is, okay, the margins, the premium increases, these kind of things look like they're at temporary highs. So if you look over time, they go up and down. They're right at one of the levels where they're coming in high, and they're expected to decline the rate of premium increases as well. But I think if you look at a business like this and you see the market solid, you've got to start buying because it's a high quality business. It never really gets cheap, and I think it's trading at a reasonable price here. So it's one of those you kind of want to have in your portfolio. Don't get too picky. When the market sniffs at it, you want to buy some. They've still got the island a venture that hasn't even begun to contribute yet. It's still consuming, still generating losses. When that turned that around, this is a great management team. So I like it. I don't think we should be too concerned about the short term here.
Standard Bank, strong update from them yesterday. We had Sim Chabalala on the Money Show last night, and very bullish about the future. I think he's got some strong reasons to be. They had the market liked it yesterday, and a bit more momentum today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's done nearly 8-9% for that update, and I think what this highlights is we still have the banks are still really high quality businesses. They are cheap. I mean, I think Standard Bank is below 8 times earnings. You've got a very attractive dividend yield north of 6%. And there's a growth runway. If we see some improvement in the economic outlook, if we do see some revival in our sort of prospects, these banks are well positioned to capture that, and across Africa, especially if you take Standard Bank with the premium franchise. So I think if investors, people are looking for opportunities, these kind of businesses are a good place to get involved.
The rand obviously stronger against the dollar, quite a lot of dollar weakness. I mean, Trump said he wanted a weaker dollar. It looks like he's getting his wish.
Yeah, exactly. I think the dollar weakness is playing out, but what I also noted today is the rand was strong against the dollar and other majors, so against the euro and the pound. So it was rand strength amongst dollar weakness, and that is very encouraging. So it's really good because it talks to, there's a bit of stealth easing going on, if you like. You've seen the oil price come down, the rand is stronger, even though the rates cutting prospect is maybe on hold. I think this is good for our inflation outlook, actually for consumer pockets. So all around, it's actually painting a well-received budget. It's painting some decent prospects ahead for the likes of SA. And, of course, the commodity prices are probably supporting the rand as well.
Grant Nader, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Well, so much to watch with gold, with the rand-dollar exchange rate at the moment. And just reminded what Standard Bank said yesterday in their SENS statement. They do expect the rand to be 17.50 to the dollar by the end of the year. Certainly seems on track to do that. You with the Money Show, just gone 6:30.
Stephen Grootes, live from the start of the Absa Cape Epic.
Well, live, of course, from the start of the Absa Cape Epic, as you heard, really is astonishingly good weather for the start of it. Good to hear from you as well. Your cycling stories, please, on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Voice notes as well on 072 702 1702. Well, someone who has plenty of cycling stories to share with us, someone who will be here at the starting gate or starting line on Sunday, and someone who has immense experience in this. She's also a member of the Absa She Untamed team. Mamelo Mnguni joins us now. She is a professional cyclist and someone who's been doing this for a long time. Mamelo, I know you were hoping to be with us. I know that I think your plane got delayed. I know you've got plenty to do before Sunday, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Good evening.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just need to correct you. I am no way, in any shape or form, a professional cyclist. I am a semi-newbie beginner mountain biker.
I've been calling myself that for about 15 years now.
Exactly,
how did
you get it.
How did you get into cycling in the first place? I mean, what was it about it? I mean, can you remember when you first got on a bike?
Yeah, really, it's about the community, man. I mean, the people are just so awesome. You hop on your bike and you're out in nature. You get to experience the beauty of what South Africa has to offer, but the company is just top tier. The community is so uplifting, and you just get to learn so much from everybody, and it's just a joy. It's a real big joy. Yeah.
Did you have a chance to do a lot of it growing up? I mean, did you go through bikes? Did you go from a sibling's bike to a sibling's bike yourself?
Well, yeah. As a youngster, I had a BMX, a pink BMX, and I would fetch my sister from school with that, and that was basically what I had. And my dad eventually owned the very skinny wheel first road bikes that were
Yes.
50s back in the day, and I rode that around a bit as well. And I kind of forgot about it growing up, and I went into running, got injured, and then found my way back as a cyclist.
My BMX was blue, in case you were wondering. I mean, there's something very gendered in that, Mamelo, but we'll pass on that for a moment. So you got back into cycling. I mean, was there a particular thing that dragged you to it? Were you finding that actually, I agree with you, it's much safer than jogging. I think jogging is nuts. But did you find that there was something about, what I've always found about it, is when you get on a bicycle and you can go really far. I mean, the scenery changes around you, and it's all about what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that you've nailed it. You get to go so far, and you get to experience, the ups and the downs. When it comes to cycling, it is quite beautiful and scenic, but you also get to experience a lot of pain and, the pain of having to climb to those beautiful views. There's a lot of climbing that's involved, especially in mountain biking. But it's just being able to push yourself and being able to conquer, and you get to that top and you get to experience the beautiful thrill of descending on the mountain bike. It's so rewarding, and it really is just such a fulfilling sport, not just for the fitness aspect of it, but just being able to push yourself mentally.
There can be a moment, I'm sure you've had this. I've had this once or twice, where it's a route that you're coming down after a long uphill, and the bike almost kind of isn't there. You're sort of floating. It's almost singing to you.
Absolutely. In the beginning, when I first started, it definitely wasn't sitting. There was a lot of touching the brakes because I was just petrified. But once you become one with your bike, as you say, and you become more comfortable and you just get to really enjoy the downhill, it really does just feel like an escape. And there's just music that plays in your ear. And one song for me that constantly plays is I'm going to ride my bicycle, my bicycle, my bicycle. I know it sounds silly, but I really feel like Freddie Mercury going down those trails.
It's amazing how that song can stick in your ear. I'm one of those people who, I think a lot of people are like this. You maybe have, let's call it 4 hours a week to ride, right? So that would be me, so maybe 2 a weekend. I'm presuming you do a little bit more like that, especially in preparation for a race like this.
Absolutely. The training is quite intense. I actually train between, it depends on what the coach obviously puts into our program, but it ranges between 12 and 16 hours a week. And I've seen some pros that end up doing 24 hours in a week. So it is quite intense. You need to stay on your bike. You need to be constantly doing the long hours, especially on the weekends, doing your 4 to 5 hour long rides, your zone 2s and that sort of thing. But it really takes a lot of commitment for the whole year. You're really just preparing yourself for this one big epic race.
I'm intrigued that you immediately answered in terms of time and not in terms of distance. I sort of, would look at I did this today. I did 20 Ks or 30 Ks. Great. I'm going to tell everyone I did 30 Ks. I'm not going to tell anyone I did 20. You immediately went to time. Why do you measure it in that way?
Well, it has to do with the amount of, so our training is quite structured. So your coach always preloads what you need to do the week ahead. And it's either intervals during the week, and they'll say you need to do either VO2 maxes or Tabata intervals, whatever the case may be. But in terms of timing, within that time, you are given specific numbers that you need to meet. Every cyclist has something that you call an FTP, and based off of that, they give you the power output that you need to put onto your bike in terms of time. So you could end up doing something that's quite intense on torque, and you're climbing a lot, and because you're climbing a lot, you're not going as fast as a flat route, for instance. So it would be an hour and a half, but somebody that rides on a flat route would end up doing 36 Ks, but you ended up doing 24 because of the route profile. Yeah.
I presume you change your routes quite often. You must have, I'm sure. There must be routes that you do quite often, routes that you maybe don't get to do as often. And I'm just talking about the training routine now. Do you have some routes that are old friends and some that are kind of faithful enemies?
Absolutely, yes. I think my faithful enemy, if people know Joburg well, they know the Henops trails, and the concrete climb is something that's a faithful enemy. One route for me that's an old faithful route are the ICG hills in Johannesburg, where you climb to the North Cliff Tower, the water tower. Yeah. I was expecting at some point that tower would get a sort of mention.
Is it important in your training to change the routes that you do regularly so you don't get too bored? You know, I mean, you kind of need a little bit of variety.
Well, look, it would be great to change and switch it up. I think the people in Cape Town get quite get spoiled in terms of route choices. Unfortunately, sometimes in Johannesburg, you just have to kind of make peace with the mundane and really just knuckle down and enjoy the fact that you're getting the hours in, you're getting the climbing in. I mean, a lot of Joburgers know the cradle route and the lollipop. It's almost like a standard operating procedure on a Saturday. Everybody's Strava profile, just you see the cradle profile. So sometimes you just have to embrace the boredom, and that's where the community comes in with the incredible people that you ride with. They make the journey much more bearable.
This is going to sound like a strange question. Are there some days where you wake up and you've got the bike loaded or you're getting on it and you kind of know this is actually going to suck. This is going to be a bad cycling day. And some days where you get on and you think, actually, this is going to be a pretty good cycling day. I mean, can you tell sometimes in advance?
Absolutely. I mean, there are more days than none that I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm either not feeling my best, I'm not 100% health-wise. You feel like you're knocking on the gates of flu. But the training needs to get done and you just force yourself to wake up, or you had a really long day the previous day and you got to bed quite late, but the training must be done. So we often have to peel ourselves out of bed and honor the process of training and respecting the partner as well, because it is a team sport, a team race at Absa Cape Epic. You have to remember that your training partner is going to be putting in the hours, so you have to respect that and honor the partnership. But the great days are great, and you wake up and you really feel great and you feel awesome. Sometimes you get humbled when you get to a ride and you thought you were fine, and then somebody puts the hammer down and you become the nail. But I think it's just about embracing the process and really loving the fact that at the end of it, it's going to be one big reward once you start seeing the benefits of that training.
It's interesting, Mamelo, you've mentioned fairly often the people you cycle with, your cycling partner now, the sort of Joel of the community. I think some people, maybe I'm just odd, but find that mountain biking in particular is a moment to actually switch off from everything else, because you can't, I find it a really useful time to decompress. And part of it is that you can't be thinking about work too much, because if you do, you'll kill yourself. I mean, I've heard some people suggest that actually mountain biking is a really good antidepressant, because for at least 2 hours you can't be thinking about, that deadline. And you're sort of in your head, but kind of not too much in your head. I find it really interesting that for you it's actually a lot more social than that.
Yeah, and you know what you've mentioned is actually so critical in mountain biking specifically, because it is such a it's not only something that you use to decompress, but you have to focus. You can't be distracted and talking too much to your friends and not paying attention to the trails. Otherwise, you're going to, fall to the ground and break something. So there is that aspect, and everything on the trails is kind of hyper focused, and you have to focus on the road ahead, the trails ahead. But afterwards, and I think for me that's been the biggest contributing factor to continuing my journey are the She Untamed ladies, because post-ride, even during the ride where you're kind of trying to find your way around the trails, you get to learn so much from other people. And once you get back to have that coffee at the stop, it's just you get to share what went wrong, what didn't go wrong, what you could improve on, what people use in terms of nutrition, what they eat on the bike, what they eat before, how much pressure they had in their tires. So you get to learn a lot as well post-ride. So I think a lot of it it's quite social afterwards, and during you're kind of head down focusing on the task at hand. But it really is just such an incredible community, especially with the She Untamed ladies at Absa.
You're not kidding when you say head down going up those hills. We're speaking to Mamelo Mnguni. She's with us all the way through until 7 o'clock tonight, a member of the Absa She Untamed team, riding the Absa Cape Epic, which of course is starting here. More from Mamelo in just a moment.
Stephen Grootes, live from the start of the Absa Cape Epic.
Speaking to Mamelo Mnguni, of course, a member of the Absa She Untamed team, one of the people riding the Absa Cape Epic. Mamelo, a long stage race like the Absa Epic, the Cape Epic, a long sort of race where you're looking at, 150, 200 Ks on a day. How much of that is mental and how much of that is physical? And the two obviously need to work together and one builds upon the other. But a lot of it is about what's going on in your own head, surely.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you talk about it with your partner in terms of communicating whilst you're out on those jobs, because you're out there for such a long time. You have to keep the channels of communication quite open, and you need to be honest with your partner to say, listen, I'm not doing too well right now. Can we slow down so that we can just conserve the energy? But also mentally, because the trails are so technical, you have to focus and you have to just make sure that you're being responsible with being the person in the front or at the back, because there's always either somebody in front of you or behind you, so that you're not choosing the wrong line. So there's a lot of focus mentally that you have to put into it, but also mentally being out there for that long. I know the pros aren't out there for as long as us back riders are, but we really do end up spending a lot of time on the trail. So you have to just keep your mind quite sharp and remember that it's not just a physical game. You also need to preserve yourself. So even after the race, you need to really just decompress and remember that there's 7 more days of this, so, kind of pace yourself, yeah.
Have there been times when you've done a race or a route and you thought at the start, I don't know if I can do this, and actually surprised yourself by how well you've done?
Oh, absolutely. There have been plenty of those days where it's so daunting, especially when you don't know the trails. Absa quite epic is quite unique in the sense that every year they change the route. Most races, it's the same route every year, and you get to kind of know what's coming. But with the Absa Cape Epic, it's always something new, something different, something fresh. So you go in thinking, oh my gosh, 3,000 meters of climbing, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And by the end of it, by the time you get to that finish line, you surprise yourself, and it's the most exhilarating feeling. I can't explain.
Yeah, no, it must just be incredible. I mean, the amount of preparation, I'm not talking about the training, I'm talking about everything else. And I mean, sort of dying to ask you questions about your bike, Mamelo. I mean, I presume it's a Softail, and I presume that it's got, that it's got tubeless tires, and I presume that it's something that you've spent a lot of time and care thinking about. And I mean, you can walk into a bike shop and think you're looking at sculpture, frankly, when you look at some of these things. And they cost what art costs, but they really are. I mean, your choice of bike matters, and you must feel settled in it. I mean, I have no idea if you and other people do this on more than one bike, but your choice of bike must be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first started, I had to quite honestly reach out to a few people to get as much information as possible, not just go for the prettiest bike, but a functional bike that will get me to do the things that the bike needs to do. And you mentioned Softail. There are so many other factors that you need to take into consideration, like having the run flat. Like you said, it's a tubeless. So when you do get a small little puncture, it kind of heals itself. Being able to change gears easily. My bike has electronic shifters. It's not a must, but it does make things a lot easier when you're dealing with such a momentous race, such a big race. The last thing you want to do is worry about whether or not your bike is going to fail you. So your bike has to really be a good quality bike. It does not have to be the most expensive, but you also need to look after it. You need to make sure that it's maintained well, and it needs to be serviced a lot more regularly than what the roadies do with their bikes. Yes.
There was a trend a few years ago to basically produce bikes with as many gears as you could possibly fit, and everyone would have a sort of, a sort of 3-ring sprocket on the front. Now it seems to me that actually that tendency is going the other way a bit.
Yeah, well, you've got. I mean, with mountain biking, it's 1 ring in the front. It does help having more gears at the back because it helps you climb. But what the difference is the teeth in the front. The big pros really go with the big ones, like the 34 teeth. I've seen some bigger than 34, 36s as well, 40s. But us plebs at the back, us mere mortals, do like 30s and 32s, which makes it a lot easier to climb when it comes to the really steep gradients on the trails.
And Mamelo, I mean, the Absa Cape Epic, why is it so special compared to other races? I mean, there's a huge amount of care and attention. Anyone can see that.
Yeah.
But clearly there's something special about it.
I think it's got a few kind of contributing factors, and the big ones are the fact that it's a team sport and you have to finish with your teammates. So whether or not you're fighting, you're happy with each other that day, things went wrong the previous day, your partner just kind of decided to leave you behind. You have to, at the end of each stage, make sure that you guys come back together and really understand that this is meant to be a team race and you're meant to finish together. If you don't finish together, it kind of defeats the purpose. So that's one of the things that are special to me. I think the biggest thing for like the physicality of the race is the fact that it is 8 days of just grueling heat, climbing, beautiful trails, and they are so technically challenging. So you're really just being pushed outside of your comfort zone. You're really being pushed outside of your norm in terms of, waking up every morning. It's like running comrades every day for 8 days. Usually you go home after a hard ride and you get to sleep it off. The next day you really need to wake up and focus and refocus yourself and your energy on the fact that you're going to be doing this for the next 8 days. So I think those are the two main things that really poke out for me as an athlete, but also because Cape Epic is such a bigger cause. I mean, they have so many charities that they raise funds for. It's about uplifting the mountain biking community through sport. It's about uplifting the underprivileged youngsters that they provide bikes for. I mean, Absa provides bikes through Grootes that gets these youngsters that literally walk 2 hours a day sometimes to get to school, and they cut that time in less than half, and they cut that time to, let's say, a half an hour a day, which is time that they can use to go back to get back home and focus on their studies. So the Absa Cape Epic is not just a race for the physicality of it and the trails and how beautiful and wonderful our kits are and the bikes are, but it really is about, community and uplifting the community around it.
Mamelo, it's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much. We'll be thinking of you as we watch the race over the next few days. Mamelo Mnguni is a member of the Absa She Untamed team, one of the people riding the Absa Cape Epic. You're with The Money Show just after 7 o'clock.